we're back again to talk about the Garmin Fenix 8 in the Enduro 3, and I might be beating a dead horse with this one because I've put out a lot of content about these watches, but I felt like I had to make this video because of you. In the comment section of my past 4 videos about these two watches, I've seen this question a number of times. If you had to pick one, which one would you pick? The Garmin Fenix 8 or the Enduro 3. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Before we get into the major differences between the Fenix 8 and the Enduro 3, we first have to address what they have in common, because there is quite a few things in common between these two watches. First of all, they both have excellent build quality. There are some differences on the Fenix 8, which we'll cover in this video, but generally speaking, these two watches are bomb-proof. They're not going to get scratched up and dinged up. They're going to last a long time. They're built really well. Another thing these two watches have in common is both have touch screens that are pretty responsive for sport watches. They're not Apple watches, but they're still pretty good. And on top of the touch screen, they also both have a very similar user experience. The user interface, the responsiveness, the snappiness, the CPU under the hood, it's all pretty much the same between these two watches. Another thing these have in common is the same GPS chipset and antenna design, and because of that, we're not even going to talk about GPS accuracy in this video because I've done that already in multiple videos, from the Garmin Fenix 7 to the 7 Pro to the Epix Pro. They all use the same GPS chipset, so they all get pretty good GPS accuracy. And on that topic, we're also going to glaze over the heart rate sensor on these two watches because, again, it is the same as the previous generation. These both have the Gen 5 heart rate sensor that is capable of electrocardiogram or ECG, and it does have skin temperature features as well. And if you do opt for the solar version of the Garmin Fenix 8, it does have the new enhanced solar technology that's more efficient and makes the display more clear. That's all the same here as well as the Enduro 3. And I saved the best for last when it comes to common features because both of these watches, as you can see, do have the built-in flashlight, which is just a lot of fun and super useful, and I use it pretty much on a daily basis. I know there's more features in common between these two watches, but the point I'm trying to get across here is that they're very similar. So with that, let's move on to the first topic, and that's going to be the price. When it comes to price, it gets pretty confusing because on the Garmin Fenix 8 at the time of launch, there's like 13 different versions available that have different features and different materials, and some have standard glass and some have sapphire. For the sake of this video, I only have one version here, and this is the sapphire version of the 47mm version with AMOLED. The Fenix 8 starts at $999 here in the USA, so $1,000 for the cheapest version of the Fenix 8 that will just get you standard glass and an AMOLED display. If you do opt to get some of the upgrades like sapphire, titanium, or even the solar option, it goes all the way up to $1,199 for the biggest version with all the bells and whistles. That is a very expensive watch. This is the most expensive Fenix that ever existed, and it's come a long way from the Fenix 1 that came out way back in 2012 that only cost $299. Of course, there's inflation, and these have a lot more features, but wow, what a difference. Now let's jump over to the Garmin Enduro 3. This one is a lot simpler because there is only one version of this watch. It comes in 51mm in diameter, it comes in one color, it comes with one type of band. There's only one option, and this watch costs $899. And the interesting thing about the Enduro 3 is that even though it's cheaper than the cheapest Fenix 8, it still comes with sapphire glass and a titanium bezel. So on paper, when you look at the features and specs and the pricing, the Garmin Enduro 3 does seem to represent a bit more of a value compared to the Fenix 8. However, it's hard to say the word value when we're talking about a $900 watch here, but I guess it is. Hey there, quick interruption. If you're finding this video useful or fun in any way, please consider going down and giving me a thumbs up and subscribing to the channel down below so you don't miss more videos from me in the future. I'd really appreciate that. And after you're done subscribing, make sure to check out the links in the description down below where you can pick up your very own Enduro 3 or Fenix 8, because those links do help support this channel, but they cost nothing extra to you, so you might as well use them. Okay, back to the video. With pricing out of the way, let's talk about size, weight, and all of the options, because again, the Fenix 8 has a lot of options, which is both a pro if you want different kinds of materials and sizes, or a con if you feel a little bit overwhelmed when you visit the website, which a lot of people do. The Garmin Fenix 8 comes in 3 different sizes. There's the small version that's 43mm in diameter. There's a middle of the road 47mm version, which is the one I have here. And then there's the biggest one, which is 51mm in diameter, which is the same size as the Enduro 3 here. It gets more confusing than that though, because if you do want the solar version of the Fenix 8, you can only get that in the middle of the road 47mm version or the biggest 51mm version. And jumping back to the Enduro 3 here, again, only one size available, and it's the biggest 51 51mm form factor. So if you do have small wrists, this might be a hard pill to swallow because it's a pretty big watch. And for a super quick size comparison, you're seeing the Fenix 8 on the left here, 47mm version, and the Enduro 3 on the right here, 51mm version, on my 165mm circumference wrist. As you can see, the Enduro 3, it's not crazy big, but it's certainly bigger than the Fenix 8, and it is much thicker as well. If I take these watches off and hold them side by side, face to face, you can see that the Enduro 3 is probably 1.5 millimeters or even maybe 2 millimeters thicker than the 47mm version of the Fenix 8. And for one more size comparison, the Garmin Fenix 8 is very similar in size to something like the Forerunner 965, which is what you see on the left side of the screen here. The overall form factor, and if I flip them on their sides, even the thickness is pretty similar. However, even though the Enduro 3 is a pretty big watch, when it comes to the weight of the Enduro 3, it gets really interesting because this watch is super lightweight. It only comes in at 57 grams for the watch case itself. And interestingly, if you take a look at this chart on the screen now and compare the Enduro 3 weight to the Garmin Fenix 8 weight in the 47mm solar form factor, you can see that they are the exact same weight despite the size difference. Moral of the story here, if you're someone who likes a smaller watch, the Enduro 3 is not even an option for you, so you could probably stop watching the video now, but don't do that. We got more to talk about. Moving right along to durability and build quality. Like I said at the beginning of this video, these two watches are both built really well. They both have sapphire glass options and they both have titanium bezels. There's a lot of metal bits, the buttons are all metal. They're built like tanks. However, the new Garmin Fenix 8 takes the build quality one step further because it does have some additional features that make it even more bomb-proof. The first feature is something called sensor guard. This little bit of metal on the side here is the actual sensor guard. And what that does is protect the microphone and some of the sensitive electronics underneath from impact. So that's the altimeter and barometer underneath there and the microphone. Now, if we take a look at the Enduro 3 on the right here, you can see a little opening in the plastic there. And that's the same thing as these sensors here, just without the sensor guard. They're just exposed to the elements there. I don't really know why these sensors need to be protected, but Garmin says they added this to protect them and make it more rugged, and it does help with some of the water resistance. But I've never had a problem with the openings of my watches in the past, so I don't expect this to be an issue on the Enduro 3 either. It is just some extra insurance on the Fenix 8. The sensor guard is just one aspect of the durability though. The other thing is the buttons. So on the Garmin Enduro 3 here, it uses the same kind of buttons that Garmin's been using pretty much forever in the past. These buttons are mechanical buttons. So there's like a tiny little pin under there that enters the cavity of the watch and interlocks with something mechanically. So when you push this button, you actually feel a click, and that click is the actual button inside the watch. However, on the Enduro 3, there is one downside to the buttons, and it's that they rely on O-rings inside the case of the watch to keep this watch waterproof. Those O-rings can dry out over time, they can break, they can leak, and if that happens, water will enter the inside of the watch, even though it is water resistant to 10 atmospheres or 100 meters. So the Enduro 3 is fine for open water swimming, pool swimming, taking it in the shower every now and then. Not a big deal. It's not a problem to get this watch wet, despite it not being rated for diving, if that makes sense. Now let's jump over to the Garmin Fenix 8, because again, this is another big improvement on the Fenix 8. This watch gets new leak-proof buttons, and how they achieve this is they're actually using wireless proximity sensors to detect when you push a button. And because of that, there's no actual opening inside the watch underneath this button. So with the Fenix 8, it's certified for diving. It's got an EN 13319 certification, which means you can take it diving for single gas dives down to 40 meters. If you are a diver, this is a pretty big deal on the Fenix 8 because it's one of the few watches out there that are dive rated in this segment. Now, when it comes to build quality, even though they are very similar looking in the front, if I flip these two watches over, you're going to notice something on the Enduro 3, and that unlike the Fenix 8 here, which has a titanium backplate to protect the back of it, the Enduro 3 has a unibody plastic design. That means it's plastic all the way from the back, all the way to the front where that titanium bezel starts. In fact, the Garmin Enduro 3 has a similar build to the Garmin Forerunner 965 I have here. The 965 on the left, the Enduro 3 on the right. And I flip them on their backs here, you can see that the 965 also has that same unibody plastic construction as the Enduro 3. It's kind of funny because it seems like a lot of people are bummed out about the plastic back on the Enduro 3. For me personally, I don't really care, and I get why they did it, and that was to reduce weight. If you think about it, how often is the back of your watch exposed to the elements and able to get scratched up? Pretty much never, because it's attached to your wrist and protected by your skin. So the fact that it's plastic in the back makes sense to me. With build quality aside, it's time to talk about the big one, and that is display technology or display type. As you've noticed as we go through this video, the Garmin Fenix 8 I have here is the AMOLED version. So it's got a super bright AMOLED display. It's got 1,000 nits of brightness, super high resolution, millions of colors to choose from, so you can do things like have an image of the sky in the background of your weather widget, while the Enduro 3 here has an MIP transflective display. The AMOLED versus MIP display debate is a battle of the ages. There are some people that are die-hard MIP fans that will never buy an AMOLED watch, and there's others that just love the AMOLED display. So it's really going to depend on your personal preference. In reality, there are pros and cons to both. So on the AMOLED watches, yes, they do look beautiful and bright and vibrant when they are on. However, they do take a lot of power to drive that display. And because of that, they are not truly always on displays. You can set them to be always on, but even in the always on display setting, they will dim down to conserve battery life and make it easier on the eyes. Jumping over to the MIP display here, this is a true always on display. This watch will never turn off the display because it takes such little power, it will just leave it on all the time. However, even though it's on all the time, the MIP display is more similar to something like an e-ink display, where the display itself does not emit light itself. And as you can see here with the backlight off, it does become kind of hard to see in different lighting conditions. Another consideration between MIP and AMOLED is the amount of colors that they can render. So on an AMOLED display, it can render literally millions of different colors, and because of that, it can do things like gradients. So if you look at the number 50 there, you can see that it's sort of an orange that blends into a teal. On the MIP display, that's pretty much impossible because it only has 64 colors to work with when rendering images. So even though these two watches have the same user interface and the same software, things will look a little bit different as you go through the menus. These are things you'll notice throughout the entire user interface, including the mapping and shaded areas of the map and navigation. It all just looks a little bit different on the Enduro 3 with the MIP display compared to the AMOLED of the Fenix 8. Moving right along, let's talk about the speaker and microphone on the Garmin Fenix 8. If you're unaware, the Fenix 8 is the first Fenix watch to feature a speaker and microphone. And it's actually pretty cool. On the Fenix 8, if I drop into the command menu, you can see I've got two options, one for phone assistant and one for voice command. So phone assistant allows you to interact with your phone's assistant. That could be Siri, Google Assistant, or Bixby, or whatever else you got. And yes, this is compatible with Apple. As you can see here, I've got an iPhone 15 Pro, and if I click phone assistant, you'll see the Siri logo pop up at the bottom there, and I can say something like, respond to text message.
Jen popped up at the bottom there, and I can say something like respond to text message.
Now, if we jump up to that other option, that is voice command, this is pretty cool. So voice command just interacts with the watch. There's no internet required, there's no phone required. These are just commands that will do things on the watch itself. For example, set a 5-minute timer. There you go, no editing, that's real time, it only takes a few seconds and now it started a timer. It doesn't just end there though with the speaker and microphone, you can obviously take and make phone calls with it as well. However, you still need your phone on you. These are not LTE enabled watches, so if you do want to make and take a phone call, you can't simply bring your watch and talk into it while you're running, you still need your phone, so yeah, speaker and microphone, cool, but necessary? Probably not. And finally, when it comes to the speaker and microphone, there's one more feature called voice notes, where you can actually record voice notes or memos to yourself if you want to remember something for later, and I find this to actually be pretty useful. Jumping back to the Enduro 3 does not have the speaker and microphone at all. All right, let's dive into the next can of worms on the Fenix 8 and Enduro 3, and that's going to be battery life. Like I said before, the Enduro 3 is purpose designed to have the most battery life possible. They used the biggest form factor, they put the best solar panel on it, just to maximize how much battery life and how long you can be out there for. Even though the Enduro 3 has incredible battery life, the Fenix 8 is no slouch either. In fact, the 47mm and 51mm versions of the Fenix 8 are still really incredible when it comes to their battery life. But just to drive it home, here's another chart for you. As you can see, these are all the different scenarios and battery specs of the Enduro 3 and the Fenix 8 lineup. So if we take a look at the Enduro 3, in smartwatch mode, you get 36 days without having any sunlight on the solar panel of the watch, and you get up to 90 days with that solar panel being used. That's up to 3 hours of sunlight per day during each day of those 90 days. In battery saver mode on the Enduro 3, you can see you get up to 92 days without any sunlight, and if you do get sunlight at least 3 hours a day, you'll get unlimited battery life. That's right, you'll never have to charge your watch again. In GPS only mode, you'll get 120 hours with no sunlight on the Enduro 3. That's absolutely insane. You could run like several hundred milers with that kind of battery life without having to charge your watch. Now, if you do get 3 hours of sunlight during that time, it'll boost all the way up to 320 hours, which is, again, pretty crazy. On the flip side, if we take a look at the Garmin Fenix 8 in this chart, in the 51mm form factor with solar, that would be the most similar to the Enduro 3 here. And that watch still gets great battery life. 30 days in smartwatch mode or 48 days with the solar panel. You've got 48 hours in battery saver mode or 107 hours with the solar function. You've got 95 hours in a GPS only activity or 149 hours if you get enough sunlight. So as you can see, the Garmin Enduro 3 definitely wins in the battery category, not just in the Garmin ecosystem, but pretty much any sport watch out there. The Enduro 3 is absolutely crazy. That said, the Fenix 8 is no slouch. I mean, the Fenix 8 51mm solar is still really good. You're getting over a month on a single charge, which is wild. Okay, we've gone through all of the different topics and we've gotten that point in the video where I want to talk final thoughts and who each one of these watches is for. Both the Fenix 8 and Enduro 3 are incredible, amazing, fully capable watches, and it's really gonna boil down to your personal preference and what you need these watches to do. At the end of the day, there's a few obvious factors that play a role on which one you should get between Enduro 3 and Fenix 8. For example, if you prefer AMOLED displays, the Enduro 3 is not an option. If you prefer a smaller watch, the Enduro 3, again, is not an option. If you need diving capabilities and leak-proof buttons, again, the Enduro 3 is not an option, and that's where the Fenix 8 shines. And if you truly value the speaker and microphone on the Fenix 8, again, the Enduro 3 doesn't have that. At the end of the day, it's pretty simple. Get the Enduro 3 if you don't mind a big watch with an MIP display, you're not a diver, and you don't care about the speaker and microphone. Oh, and you like the color black. Because if you're okay with all of those specs, the Enduro 3 can save you up to $300 compared to the Fenix 8. On the other hand, if you do want a smaller watch, you are a diver, you want an AMOLED display and all the other features, that's where the Fenix 8 shines, despite its really high price point. At the end of the day though, I'm just some guy on YouTube and that's just purely my opinion. So that's why I want to hear from you in the comments down below. Are you gonna go for the Garmin Fenix 8 or the Enduro 3? Which feature is most important to you? Do you like AMOLED? Do you like MIP? Let me know in the comments down below. I would love to hear from you. And after you're done commenting down there, make sure to go down and give me a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel down below so you don't miss more videos coming in the future from me, because there's a lot going on. And after you subscribe and comment and do all the things, check out the description down below where I do have links over to my friends at playbetter.com where you can pick up the Fenix 8 or the Enduro 3 or any other watch I'll have listed down below. And shopping at Playbetter and using those links down below also helps support my channel and what I'm doing here, so you might as well use them. And after you check out the product links down below, make sure to check out all of my other social media accounts like my Instagram, my Strava, and my merch store where you can pick up a sweet shirt like this. All right, friends, that's the end of this one. I hope you found it useful, and I'll see you next time. Bye.